Hi, everybody. Hope you're all having a great day. My name is Brittany, and I will be your studio host today from Etcher Lab. I don't know if it's morning or afternoon or evening where you are in the world, but thank you for joining us. Today, we have an amazing artist named Claudia Selene. She'll be doing a watercolor portrait, but first showing you the step-by-step drawing process of how to get the right shapes and everything for your portrait. Today she'll be going more at her own pace, but that's okay because she'll be doing a mini workshop with us and you'll be able to go a little bit more step by step at your pace, and it's way more interactive in your own Zoom meeting with her. Just a couple things before we get started. If you're a frequent flyer with us, thank you again for coming back. If you're new to these workshops, thank you for joining us. It's lovely to see you here. These are a great way to inspire yourself to get back into creating if you haven't done it for a while, or to grab some friends and maybe do it all together as an activity. These workshops, we do them pretty much every day, these live demos. And just a couple of things to note: if you have any questions, please don't be shy, but just type it in all capital letters so I can just defer it a little bit easier from a comment. We also do a Q&A session at the end of these. So if I don't get to your question right away, don't worry. I will certainly ask it at the end. I save them all on like a little note page so I don't miss them. Without further ado, I will stop talking and let Claudia take over. If anything comes up, please just kind of pay attention into the chat because I will put certain notes in there every once in a while. And other than that, Claudia, do you want to take over?
Hey guys, so nice to see you all here. And yeah, so a little bit about me. I want to tell you that, well, for one thing, so we're talking about portrait drawing and portrait painting, and it's a really, really simple process. It's simple, but it's definitely not easy. So if you're trying to learn how to draw portraits on your own, don't think you're going to get it in 45 minutes, the first time that you're trying it. So I'm going to go quickly. It's a process I've been through a lot of times. And if you start to really pay attention to the steps in the process and how I do that, you can be practicing that on your own and practicing more and more. I was actually classically trained at the Ravenswood Atelier in Chicago. So I spent a lot of hours in front of the easel just doing very grueling sight size, things that are exactly the same size from life, very specific shadow shapes. And what we're working on here, we are going to see a lot of these shadow shapes, which is kind of a old master style way of having the image. And it's a very impactful way of having the image, of just really focusing on light and dark. So I'm going to show you a couple of these. I'll show you the one that we're going to do today here. So this is the one that we're going to be working on today. Obviously you can see, here's my photo. And we're just taking, so I've even enhanced this photo just to really make, all the shadows kind of blend together. And then we're just copying the shapes of the light and the shapes of the shadow, because obviously we're going to put in the shadow we're going to put the color only into the shadow spaces. So that's one. If you join me for the mini workshop later on, we'll be working on this one, who is actually my handsome husband. So that's it's going to be a little more simple in terms of the shapes than this little girl who has, so many details in the hair and the eyelashes and things. But you can see exactly the same thing going on here. We have a really simple shadow shape around the edges. So it can get, completely crazy, whatever color combination. So I told you the colors that I was going to use for our little girl here, but you don't have to use those colors all the time. Here, I'll switch back to me and say hi for another minute before I start drawing here, and you won't see my face again for a while. So yeah, so you can really use any colors and, just start enjoying, figuring out what colors that you like and what work well together. And in watercolor, some of them react to each other in a really cool, different way, just depending on the pigments. So you can have fun with that. So hopefully hopefully that you can explore as much as you want. And the drawing, I'm just going to go ahead and get started because it takes quite some time, and I really want you guys to see as much as possible how I do this. So to begin with, so I have my my photo, and if you're new to drawing portraits, you really want to draw them, like print out a photo and have it right the same size as the drawing that you're going to do, because that will make some of these steps a lot easier to do. There's other ways, and I'm going to point out the ways that you can use this in life if you're doing life drawing, or if you're using it, if you're going from a different at a different size than what you have. But this is really the easiest, and you want to tape it down securely side by side so that nothing's moving around, because you can easily take a wrong measurement if things are moving around. So so you want everything secure, you want everything the same size, you want your photo, like your drawing's only going to be as good as your photo. So figure that piece of it out when you're working on your own. I'm going to start by taking a few very simple initial measurements. So actually what I'm going to start with, and I can kind of cheat here because I'm making this exactly the same as my photo. I'm going to measure from the edge of the paper to the edge of the little girl's cheek there. So I have like that simple, so you were looking for the most simple, gluing my eye to this point here. So you're looking for the most simple straight lines that you can find. So it's really, the method is based off of these straight lines. So I'm trying to find everything in terms of these very simple angles on straight lines. So I want the biggest, most obvious things first. So I can put in, you know, where is this general, and this is at an angle, but I put in, you know, just how far is it from the edge of the paper right there by her eye. The other thing I can find right away then is the corner of her eye, because a lot of things in the face have to do with the proportion of the eye to the forehead, the proportion of the eye to the chin. So you really want to be paying close attention to where that eye is. It's kind of a major thing, and it's right here by the line that we already have. So so I'll take that measurement. Again, I kind of just glue my eye to where it is on the paper. Place it down. I can double check it, make sure I put it in the right place. So that's one thing. I'm going to take one more measurement from the edge of the paper. Oh, I apologize about my finger here. I managed to cut it, so you get an ugly Band-Aid to look at while I'm pointing at things, but it's my left hand. I need it. So I'm going to take one more measurement from the edge of the paper to the edge of the little girl's nose, this shadow. So the other thing you notice looking at this one is this shadow is this line of the shadow is very important. So if I find that right away, that's going to help. It's going to be another big major thing, and I may as well find it right next to the eye. So right there. And it's, again, mostly straight, so I can kind of just put it in as a straight line. And so now that I have some basic vertical measurements, of course I managed to tangle up my plumb line. Now that I have some basic vertical measurements, I can start to find more of the things. Where is that? Let me use my other plumb line here. I can find where's the bottom of the nose, where's the bottom of the mouth, the bottom of the chin. So actually the bottom of the chin's a good, you know, that, and she goes right to the top of the paper, but normally you would of course want to find out where's the top of the head. So you have some idea, and the visual is very important too. So you definitely want to have some idea about the whole shape of the thing as it's coming along, so you can judge. Like right here, I can start to put my eye and judge how far that is. Did I get that distance correct? So having things that make it a little easier to see. So let me I'll put in just a simple straight line for the mouth, right in the middle of the mouth there. I didn't glue my eye too carefully, so let me make sure that went where it should have. right, so mouth is all right. The nose, we'll get the bottom of the nose put in. So this method works very well if you're working from a photograph. If I was not working from a photograph, I would be using what's called triangulation. So I'm going to try and show you some of that now, so you start to see if I'm working from a live model or I'm working at a different scale. I need some very, very, very specific points to start with that I know, and then once I have those, I can really go more crazy with it. So I'm going to measure, use my pencil to measure from the corner of her eye to the corner of her face, or to the edge of her face, so that I already have where that corner of the eye is on the vertical plane, and now I need to know where is it, you know, how far in is it from the edge of the face. So if I take that measurement, so everything, every point that you put in is going to have that, have those two components to it. You need to know where is it horizontally and where is it vertically. So if you're kind of a mathy person, you can think of it in terms of the x-axis and the y-axis. The other thing I'm going to do is, as soon as I get something put in that's more specific, I'm going to take away those extra lines. So we call them construction lines that you just use to kind of help you hash things out. So you don't want to leave those. You want them only as long as you need them, because a lot of extra lines is just going to create more confusion for you. So now that I have this point and I know exactly right where it is, in fact, I can even remind myself here, I'll go ahead and draw in a little of her lashes, so I don't imagine that that point is the edge of the lashes. I know it's right there at the edge of the eye. So now that I have that point, I can start to figure out a lot of other things. Like I want to know maybe specifically where this point will be at the lower part of her nose. Now we know where the nose sits on this, again, on the vertical plane, but we don't know where this point is on the horizontal. So I can take an angle right from that corner of the eye right down to the point of the nose. And so if I carry that angle, if I carry it very faithfully, this is the other reason for carrying these angles across. I really much prefer, okay, so it's like right there. I much prefer to use to be drawing at an easel than drawing sitting on a table, because when you're holding your arms out in front of you, it's easier to take the angles. But we can see here, so that's that little shadow at the top of her lip. So from there, I can actually, it's another point, so now I don't need this construction line. It's another point where I can start to kind of draw things just based on knowing where that point is very securely. So I can kind of get the shape of this coming up, and then we know it's going to kind of come over here and up and meet this line. Now this line is not, it's almost at a vertical, but it's not quite at a vertical. So it's just a little bit leaning off to the side. So the way I drew it at first, I'll just draw it slightly different here, just a little bit tilted. So the thing about finding all the shadows, I'm going to try and talk generally about some things that are going to help too as I keep finding these specific points. The thing about finding the shadows is the shadow shape is telling you what's happening with the construction of the face. So if you study a skull, and you'll see that there are bones right here. So when we see this shadow under the nose, there's a bone here, and then there's a soft spot under there, under that bone, you know, that allows for that shadow. And there's a spot, a sunken in area here where the eyeball sits. So all of these are giving us clues about this structure. So none of it is, you think of the face in terms of the personality and all these different things, but really what we recognize as the personality is very much informed by the structure. So how we read the personality is informed by the bone structure, and then how the muscles sit on the bones, and then they pull them certain ways and create. So this, I found this point, and then I can make this little out and in shape. So this is another bit right here that's giving us a little personality, because her little eye, she kind of looks concerned. So we get some of that sense of a raised eyebrow there, or something going on with the muscles. Let me see, let me find the corner of the mouth. So yeah, when you think of like, it's easy to think, oh, I just want to draw, you know, what I feel. I want to draw, finding, okay, the corner there by the angle. I just want to draw what I feel. I just want to draw, you know, the personality. The personality really rests in the structure of the face. So you have to get the accuracy in order to get the personality. There's no way around it. There's no, you know, kind of quick way, you know, without doing the measuring and without really being able to draw the thing to get the personality. Unless it starts to look like a cartoon. So, okay, so there's the corner of the mouth. So I'm trying to, again, let me go ahead and put in a little more of this eye. So the corner, the eyes in general, in her face, the whole face is tilted just a little bit over. So if we connect all the corners of the eyes, you know, to this other eye, we're going to see just a little bit of kind of, probably like that, a little bit of tilt in her face. So you want to be aware of that right away, you know, which plays out also this tilt that we're seeing a little bit in the shadow. So the eyes have to be definitely straight across from each other, but you have to take into account the tilt of the whole head. So here's from one corner of the eye to the other corner of the eye is down. And actually, I have to make sure that I'm getting it far enough from the nose. So this is telling me if I have something going wrong here, like this looks like it's too small, it means either this needs to be pushed over just slightly or this needs to be pushed over. So I'll check. I have to recheck where that is. Looks like it can go over just slightly, and sometimes it's 6 of 1, and even the smallest thing is going to make a difference. So as you're working through this process, it's very important not to cut any corners, because you can end up, I'm going to move this just a little bit over here, and that feels more correct there for this distance. I have to feel this distance correctly and that distance correctly to be able to get the width of the eye. And then now I need to know where's that corner. So the corner's down there. So yeah, all the shapes are important. All the angles are important because a human being is just such a complicated, it's complicated and only because we read very carefully the shapes. So everything is equally easy or equally complex. But we look harder at a human being. So when you're drawing a human being, you want to spend all that extra time to really check and make sure what you're doing is making sense. So here we have a lot to do with the personality of the eye because it's coming up this way, and kind of where these two meet creates a lot of the personality that we see going on there. So we want those to come in correctly. The other thing about drawing for watercolor specifically, as sort of for other mediums too, but especially for watercolor, since all we're trying to do is figure out where do I put the color and where do I not put the color, we're looking at these closed shapes. So you really want to see, okay, that's going to end over from that eye over here. You really want to make like an empty enclosed shape that you'll be able to put color into. So lines aren't going to help you in watercolor very much on this. So like, for instance, this line here, I'm going to draw that right up into that the iris of the eye. And the other thing you want to really pay attention to is your negative shapes. So this here is going to be a light shape, and I want to make sure that that's looking correct as a light shape. And I'm actually going to ignore that tiny bit of dark there because it's kind of a lighter color of dark. So that's the eyelash. Actually, there. And let that light shape just bleed right into the cheek here. So areas where you can find things like that, that's a very, very important thing to do. And this, I'm also going to give a little space and let this bleed right down into the shape under the eye. So now we have a shape of the eye, and I don't know if you know, if you're not used to looking at it, if you can sort of see that it starts to look like something, something like an eye. And now that we have a bit of that in, so we have the top of the eye, I can start to see, I'll go ahead and put in the ear, and the ear, top of the ear ends up being right in line with the top of the eyebrow. So that's kind of nice. Little circumstance there. Actually, it looks like it's more in line with the bottom of the eyebrow. So you do want to make sure when you're holding your line, of course, that you hold it level, because that's going to be, if you are taking your measurements crooked, it's going to make things weird. So, so there's the top of the ear. Let me find the bottom of the ear.
Hey, Claudia, you're having such a good flow here. I didn't want to interrupt with any questions, but I feel like I have to ask this one at this point.
Yeah, please ask.
Any tips for drawing eyes, just because we just talked about the eye?
So my tip for drawing the eyes is to you really have to study them as light shapes and dark shapes like this. You want to understand and think of it very, very abstractly, like do it upside down, draw it sideways, close your eyes, blow it up and only look at like that one little part. You really want to see those abstract shapes and just think of the relationships of things to each other. What is this? Okay, it's over from there. What is this, this highest point of this arch as opposed to the highest point, where this iris meets the upper lid, this. So you want to think straight lines. You want to really just break it down in a very abstract way and get all the relationships exactly right. Because as soon as you start kind of drawing ovals and drawing swishy shapes, you're going to be, far out and kind of nowhere near the shape that the actual person has. And of course, it does help to study your anatomy and understand, it's a ball that's sitting inside of the socket of the skull. I don't have one of my skulls. I have my clay version of the skull, but we have a socket here, so the eyeball sits inside that socket. So when we see these, shadows going on around there, and this is actually just skin that's kind of flapping over like a ball that you imagine sitting inside the socket. So all of that is very helpful to know. Also, as you go about it, like you do want to know that, but you don't want to get lost in that, because in the end of the day, what we have is just light and dark, shapes of light, shapes of dark. So I'm going to get this angle of the face a little more accurate here. So it's coming in at just a slight slight bit more of an angle. Yeah, so I would say learn to see the shapes first and then learn to see and then worry about like the anatomy, you know, what's going on with there. Because I've definitely seen people get so lost in like drawing cute little highlights and shiny bits and things like that, that they're not they're not able to find that abstract shape and the whole, like the form, the actual like shadows and light of the form. So really when we're drawing, we're just drawing what form, what the light is hitting. So we're playing nice with the light. Like there's not really anything else. Let me make sure I get the top of the lip right in the right spot here. Like there is no form without light. So where the light is coming from, how it's hitting your object, like that's giving you your entire, I'll check that angle again to there. Yeah. That's giving you your entire kind of shape of what you're seeing. So what you're seeing is how the light is interacting with the actual form. So actually I'm seeing now I kind of simplified this. I skipped these little lights in here and just made this completely dark, and I think that works out pretty well. So sometimes you want to simplify things a little bit more. So as I do this, this comes down and then we jump over a little bit and we get to this edge. So I started talking a little bit about shapes in terms of the eye, and I should probably talk a little more about negative shapes, because now that I've got some big measurements, some big things where they need to go, you guys can you can see that I'm starting to, it looks like I'm freehanding things. So what I'm doing when I'm, you know, just drawing in these shapes is I'm looking at this whole space here that happens under the nose. And this is the negative shape, the white part, the, you know, that I'm not drawing in. And I'm saying, okay, so does that feel wide enough? And does it have a bump in the right place? You know, and sometimes we would say like, okay, it looks like a, somebody's shoe, or it looks like a rhinoceros, or a dragon that's chasing its own tail, or whatever. Like you want to see it in a really abstract way and just look at the shape and say, what's going on with just that shape. So
Just to let you know, Claudia, we're about halfway.
okay, so I'm not going to be able to get completely through this drawing before I start to put in the, you know, to because I'm talking a lot and I'm interested in explaining to you what I'm doing. So
No worries, no worries.
so I'm going to have to, in a minute here, I'm going to jump over to another drawing that I did that's finished of this girl. So so if I was going to continue, so I think the outer edge of the, maybe it's important for me to talk a little bit about the outer edge of the face. So we have this kind of, because people tend to make it like, oh, it's a really soft line, but if you don't get where it bends exactly in the right place, you also miss a lot of the personality. So so if you think of it like my line is running along right there, and then where does it stop meeting that straight line? So I have the start of that straight line, and then right here, it starts bending off a little more. So I can see, okay, that's right at the bottom of the nose. So right here is where I'm gonna start. It starts to curve, and that's a little, you know, muscle of her jaw, and shows kind of like how relaxed she is, or how tense she is, or is she grinning. So those muscles of the cheeks are really important. And then I can see here, how much is it turning? I tried to turn it a little too much. So if you really think of all of these, you know, kind of as tangent lines, so then there's almost kind of another turn that we can say right here across from the mouth that turns in again there. then I would say kind of where this shadow is headed, which we're only going to put in this little bit, but we can kind of see the direction of it headed down there. And that's where it's going to turn in even more and head over to her chin. And the chin takes a really strong dip, you know, right there, which is kind of right under this. So if I pull this a little more. So I'm always looking for relationships of things to each other. So I'm looking for, you know, that point where it turns to the mouth, make sure that the mouth is relating to the eye, the nose to the eye and the mouth. So you never want to just go along a line and say, oh, I'm drawing, and hope that you end up in the right place. Like you have to be checking all the time. So this is a little more of a bent line. So I'll put it in as a bent line. And that follows what we were saying about the eyes are a little bit bent to each other. There's that kind of slant to her whole face. So, so across the face too, you know, when I start to put in the eyebrow here, I'm, you know, going to want to check that. So I'm drawing just the, she doesn't really have an eyebrow because she's blonde. So it's really the shadow under the eyebrow that is getting drawn in there. So you never want to think of things as an actual thing. You want to think of it just as a shape of dark. But if I look at that, I can see like, okay, where the top of that shape of dark is here is related to where the top of this dark shape is on the other side. So I can, you know, check and make sure that those are relating to each other. So when I come over to do this eye, I'm going to do the same thing, like check it mostly with this eye. I can check it with everything, but mostly to make sure it's with the other eye. So unfortunately, I got to get to the watercolor part. So checking the two eyes to each other, I'll pull this up really quick and start kind of showing you what I have here. So this is my finished drawing from yesterday, which I also put some masking fluid in because I wouldn't put a mark on it. But I'll rub it off because it's on the masking fluid. So this is the drawing that has the masking fluid in it and has everything finished. So you can see these two eyes, how they're kind of relating to each other. I drew this in really lightly because it's a soft shape, but I'm going to draw it just a little harder right now so that you can really see. Because I want you to really see, and I didn't get time to draw it, but I want you to see how this shape of the eye comes about, because this can be very confusing to people. Like, what do I do when, you know, when I just see a tiny bit and then they want to like scrub in something darker in here, they want to like make something out of that. But all you can look for is just draw in the shapes of the light where they are, and everything else, you know, just becomes part of this general mush. So so I just did this little shape here, this shape for the light, shape for the upper lid, shape for the upper, I'm not sure what that kind of muscle in the upper lid is called, and then above the eyebrow here. So so that's the only shapes, and everything else is going to get color. So I'm going to go ahead and switch these two out and grab my watercolors. We'll get to the color portion. And if anybody has any questions at this moment, it might be a good moment to interject.
Yeah, of course. I saved a couple from earlier. A couple people were wondering why string over rulers. Is it a personal preference or?
For me, well, one thing is they call it a plumb line. So if you're working in real life, if you have a string with a weight at the end and you hold it straight up, if you're working with a model, you can see what's actually happening with gravity, what is straight up and down, which is really easy to lose track of. The other thing is when you're using if you're using a ruler, it's going to cover up a whole bunch of what you're doing. So I prefer string just so that I can really see everything on both sides. Like I'm not just working on this tiny thing that I'm putting a mark on. I can really see what's going on with the whole thing. And you can judge, you know, how much space is below, how much space is above. Does that, you know, look the same way as in your drawing? So that, I think that's the two reasons. Obviously the reason not to is they tend to get tangled. People also use, for drawing this way, have been known to use like a straight piece of coat hanger wire or something that stays in a straight line but is a little thinner.
Thanks for that answer. Another question here. Are measurements taught in most portrait classes? What a great way to learn placement.
I think
Like, did you learn it in school, for example?
I learned it at the atelier, and actually I was modeling for a lot of people in Chicago, and not too many before that. And not too many people actually do teach a very systematic form of measurement. So you have to be, don't assume because you're taking a portrait class, they're going to have a good way of teaching it. Like really research that teacher and where did they learn and do you really like their work? Yeah, that's going to be the most important thing is do they have a system for teaching something, you know? Because a lot of people don't, and some people do though. I think it's more and more people are teaching systematically now. So you can go on as soon as I'll just explain what I'm going to do to start the watercolor. So the watercolor,
no worries.
If you wanted to do this in a I don't know, I should say an easy way, or like you could mask off as many of the white areas as you wanted with your masking fluid. And then just be able to paint water over the whole thing. So just depending on how much you kind of trust your hand and at the time while you're painting, you can do more or less. I put in really the small details with the masking fluid, and then the hair I put in because you need these really fine lines. And the highlights like in the lip and in the eyes. But a lot of the stuff I don't. A lot of the stuff I'll just do by hand. So so I'm gonna wet big areas and but not go right up to my form. I'm just gonna wet. So if I start putting, oops, that's actually where I want water. So I can go over the hair because I know that I've masked it, but everywhere else I have to be careful. Oh, actually, you know what? Since I'm doing water, I'm gonna put a little bit of green in there. So I'm gonna tint my water. You should use, when you do this, do it with plain water, but I want you to see where I'm putting the water. So I'm just gonna tint it a little bit so that you can see what I'm doing. So I'm really soaking it, and I could use a bigger brush, but I'm gonna, you know, this stage of it's gonna go quickly. But I'm really making it very, very wet because I want to have time to get to the edge of the whole thing. And actually, I can do it one section at a time. So this is probably the simplest section because I just have to do that ear up to the eye. So I don't want to wet anything that I'm not going to work on right now because it's just going to start getting dry and I won't know how wet or how dry it is. So I'm just going to wet this area and start putting the color in, and it's kind of all broken off by this white shape. So I'll do this area and then I can start working on this area, and then I can do these smaller, like the eyes and some of the things in between. But the more you can break things up and see where you can break it up, it's good. It gives you a chance, gives you time. So I'm going to switch to my other real pointy brush and get right around the edges here. And these, so I'm putting in color, and it's really not, I know that I want it to be dark, but it doesn't necessarily matter other than that, like what color it is. So the color choices become a very abstract choice at this point. Like you want to kind of feel where you want the most. So I'm being real careful around the edge here. You want to feel where you want the most attention drawn and kind of put your darkest dark right up next to that. So in my colors here, I know I have this, the blue is going to be my darkest dark. And I didn't really talk too much about colors. Like I said, the colors is not so important, but you do want to know how dark and light your colors are so that you can make those choices. And you can see, so because I put all this wet water, when I'm going and making a really nice hard edge next to the face, the rest of it is just bleeding out here. If I just start to do this on dry paper, I'm going to get a weird hard edge right next to it. So it's really important to kind of put that couch of water in right away. And I'll go ahead and put a little darker color right here just to, so I know I'm going to want to pull that out pretty good. Yeah, so having it able to just kind of bleed away and create a soft edge is very important. So that's why putting the water, but I don't put it right up to the edge because I want to be able to do it right now. Really pay attention and do it nicely how I want it, exactly where I want it. And I want this inner ear to be the same colors. A thirsty brush, I'll go ahead and soak out a little of that. Got to beat it up. I want it to be the same colors, so I want to do this at the same time that I'm doing the rest of the area over here. Okay, I think I've kind of explained it. If you have some more questions there that you want to get to.
Yeah, no worries. You're doing a great job of explaining. A lot of people in the chat are saying how great of a teacher you are, and a few of them have already signed up for your mini workshop.
Yay, awesome. Thanks, you guys. So this, I'm being sloppy because I had already masked off the hair, so I know that I don't have to worry over here about the hair, about getting, I do want to make sure that I get in between those nice little masking bits. So the masking fluid can make really nice thin lines. I haven't found a brand that I like, so I just use that, the needle is a nice idea, but I find that they clog. So I tend to just use a bottle of masking fluid and dip a Q-tip in it and do these lines with the end, or with the these are nice because I have the thin end and then the thick end if I need to cover more.
Mm-hmm.
But you could also just use a piece of, or toothpick or something,
I like using the end of a paper clip or like a sewing needle to get really fine lines if needed.
Yeah, that's true. A sewing needle would even do that more. So now I have to think a little bit before I go on. I have to think a little bit about what's going to be my. I'll go into these blues, into the dark here. Bring a little blue all the way around. I do want to think kind of, more about what my structure is going to be here, and I'll put a little of this yellow in the top just to give it something else going on there. Okay, and then I'm gonna do this other side exactly the same way. So pre-wet, I'll show you again. So use clean water when you do it, but I guess you don't have to, but sometimes if you don't get what you want, it can dry with that little bit of tinting to your water. So I don't usually prefer it, but I'm gonna show you with a little tinting so you can see, and I'm really, again, soaking it. Also, if you wanted texture and you had time, and I know I'm going to dry this with a hair dryer, so I'm not going to have time to do it, but if you wanted to do if you wanted to do salt, or you wanted to do saran wrap, or any of your kind of texturing techniques into those larger areas, you definitely can do that. So okay. I'm going to get enough of this without actually touching my lines. Kind of go in here.
Quick question for you.
Yeah.
The participants, when they start to paint, they should lighten up their lines, because you just made them this dark for tutorial purposes, correct?
Yes, yeah, that's true. So you do want to have your lines, and always in watercolor, you want to pretty much have your lines as light as you possibly can make them, because you don't want to see lines in your work. So I'll start with a dark area, an area.
Depending on style choice, of course.
Yeah, if you want to see your line, that's true. Of course, if you want to see your lines, you should definitely do that, because yeah, and I do actually do quite a bit of work where I add pen and stuff too, but yeah. But yes, if you're trying to do a more realistic watercolor, or you don't specifically want to see the lines, then yeah, lighten it up first. So I'm going around these shadow areas. Remember that watercolor is a lot of just trial and error, like testing stuff out and seeing what you like, what you don't like. And because you really can't learn like how something's going to look until you do it. So there's, how different colors look when they blend together. There's like what shapes actually make any sense. I'm going to make this area over here darker. Actually, before this dries, I'm going to put a little more blue into this side. Sometimes I'm actually learning to enjoy some of the bleed backs and stuff. So if I put something into a damp area and you're like, oh my God, I might create a bleed back, sometimes it's kind of fun. So it might be wet enough not to do that now, but these things, like, we want a lot of texture because it's very we're really trying to make people able to see the watercoloriness of the watercolor. So I'm gonna start to bring in more. Sorry, bumped my camera. Bring in more light green for her face. So the only thing I'm kind of doing to show, that her face is kind of coming out here and stuff, I am a little bit lightening up my color choices within the shadows. Not a lot, but I won't have them be these very dark darks, just because it is kind of an area that's leaning forward. So when you get down, okay, I know I've masked off these highlights in the lips, but yeah, when you get to these areas that have to do with her features and her personality, for the life of you, go carefully. Make lines that you can trust, and then trust them, and just take your time. And then, of course, once you have the painting in those areas, you can put more color. So I can, immediately say, like, okay, I know I want a little more dark in the lips and it's still wet. So I can just, toss some more dark right on in. There, maybe it's a little too dark. Lighten that up a little bit. We'll make a little darker next to the nose. So I'm doing a little bit. You don't have to do really anything to the shadow to make a good illusion. I'm doing like a little bit with the shadow. We'll see how it works out. I'm thinking I will do a little bit with the shadow to kind of darken certain areas and lighten certain areas. I'll go back to my lighter green here. So I'm going around this light. Some of these lights on the forehead are not going to be very light. Getting the hair I don't have to worry about because I already masked off what I want. Yeah, some of these areas, like this side of the cheek and this part, like, they're not going to be as light as, no, they're not going to be you don't necessarily want them to be brilliant white, but you can go in with a very light wash of watercolor and kind of tint them later. Okay, I can go straight through the two. Go a little darker right in here. I can go straight through the two highlights in the eye because I know that I masked them out. So now I pretty much have everything wet except I haven't done that side of the eye. But while this side is wet, I need to make decisions. You know, anything that I put in now, it's going to bleed around nicely. And if I wait too long, it's not. So if I want to darken something, I'll go ahead and darken by the eye. And I already did the nose. I think I'm going to darken a little more along the back side of the cheek here. So I can kind of control how it's blending out, but also it's just doing a lot of like blending. So there's still a very like random thing going on, which I want it to be because I don't want it to look too controlled here. Let's see, I want all of this a little generally darker over here. Darker in here.
We have about 7 minutes left, but if we need a little bit more time, we can go over a few minutes. No worries there.
Okay, yeah, if you guys have time to hang on with me, anyway, I'll get through the eye and we could actually, so I'm going to paint in this other eye just like very carefully. And this I'm doing dry brush because just because it's such a small shape, so there's no need to make it wet beforehand when you're working with really small shapes. But yeah, if you want to give me some more questions, if there's things that we haven't addressed yet, I'm sorry it's taking.
No, you're all good. You're all good. So question here, do you tend to draw and paint mainly on a white surface, or do you use other colored papers?
In watercolor, I don't use other colored paper because watercolor is a transparent medium, so it's just going to be it's going to soak up too much of the color under it. Like it won't go over it. Now, if you're using something an opaque medium like gouache, or I do a lot of drawing on tinted or toned paper, which actually you can use your watercolors and tone your own paper, which is great fun for drawing on. So if you want to play with that, it's a fun thing to play with.
And then what weight of paper are you currently using?
So this is a 140 pound, and this is actually Arches. I usually always use Arches paper. The etcher paper is actually the what's it called? The Perfect Sketchbook is actually very nice. I didn't use it today because I just didn't want to. I wanted to keep my sketchbook together, and this one I wanted to chop out or cut out. So this is Arches, but yeah, be very if you're having trouble getting a certain effect, and it might be, just be aware that it might be your paper, especially if you're using some cheap like Canson or something like that. Like they can definitely give you problems.
And then do you usually spend more time drawing or painting?
In watercolor, more time would be spent on the drawing because that's like when you start putting in the colors, you can see it's kind of, goes very quick from there. In oil painting, I spend a lot of time with the layers of the painting. So putting in the drawing is actually the faster part. then me personally, in terms of just drawing and making drawings, probably I make fewer of them just because they're, I don't know. I would say for a student, draw, 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 draw. So that's maybe my real, what the answer I should be giving, like practice your drawing, because if you can't make the shapes, then there's no point to the rest of it. So, you know, and if you don't understand what the values should be, if you can't see what's dark and what's light, then there's no point to the whole thing. So, so you really have to spend more time learning to draw, definitely, than learning to paint. Does that sort of answer that?
Yeah, that's a great answer. Curious about her drawing utensil. I have been trying to find a good mechanical pencil to use. So that pencil you were using earlier, what?
This is, oh man, I can't read it. They do sell these in art stores. It's kind of a thicker lead, and actually the way that I sharpen it is with a sanding block. So, if you're prepared to do that, I love it. I love the thicker lead. They make finer ones, but then this one I can make it quite long, so I can kind of use it as a measuring tool. You saw, like, yeah, so you can find these in the art stores. The other way to find awesome, I have a whole set of these that I found that's just an old drafting kit that somebody had. So sometimes on Craigslist or something, you can find something of that nature, which is a lovely find, and we'll have some of those old pencils in them. Okay, I'm going to dry this real quick.
No worries.
So I will mute myself, and then
you actually don't need to. Zoom has a feature where it'll just cut out loud noises.
Oh, okay.
All right. It's super cool.
You guys chat, and I will be right back.
All right, no problem. All right, so everybody, if you haven't already signed up for her mini workshop, it is a great place to learn all these amazing techniques she's been showing us. And like I said earlier, it's a more step-by-step approach, following your pace more in the mini workshop. It is an hour and a half long, so you do have that extra half hour more than today. If you missed the little link in the chat earlier, I'll post another one. It is on August 21st. If you can't make the day or time, no worries. You can purchase the workshop and we'll send you a recording of it. I know it's not the most ideal situation as being live, but if you really want to learn these techniques, then I highly suggest signing up for the mini workshop. Also, just another thing to note, the little link for the survey that I've been sharing, it really helps us out if you guys fill it out at the end of today's live demo. It takes less than 2 minutes to fill out, and it's just kind of a multiple choice, quick survey, and at the bottom there's a comment section. If you guys want to see any upcoming things in live demos or anything like that, it's a good place to put that in there. Like I said, it really helps us out for future content. If anything we need to improve on, you can just put it in there. Or if you just, think that Claudia and I did a really, really good job today and you want to say nothing but positive things on there, I'm totally okay with that too. So there's the link for that little survey.
All right, so right now I'm just taking off my masking fluid here.
Are you just using an eraser or is it like a rubber tool?
This is a rubber pickup that you can buy at Blick or whatever. You can just use the flat of your finger too. Just make sure, of course, that your hands are clean. And this just makes it a little, especially if you have a lot, certain times it makes it easier and quicker. I think people have it for, what am I thinking of? Rubber cement is what they use the rubber pickup for. So I'm definitely seeing like areas that if I spent more time, I would like to have gone a little darker, maybe on the darker side. Like there's things, and actually if you want to go, later back into what you have, I would suggest be careful because it can become a big mess. So what you want to avoid is having a lot of water. So you can do just like a very, I'm drying my brush. So you can, if I wanted to darken this area, I can kind of put it in just like very carefully and then kind of dry it out and just soften the edges that way. So you can do more work afterwards in watercolor, just be careful. So I think working dry is better because if you put a lot of water on top, you can end up getting things very muddy. The other thing I'd like to show you for 2 seconds is the possibility of softening the edges. So certain areas, I said like areas in here, they're a little too sharp maybe right now. So we can just go back after it's dry. I'm just using again, I don't want my brush super wet, just kind of damp. Sorry, I just dried it again because it's a little too wet, but you can kind of just use a little bit of a damp brush to blur that edge, which can create a nice softer effect for certain areas that you don't want them to be super sharp. So you can start looking and you'll see in a lot of art materials and stuff, they talk about soft and hard edges. So it's a good opportunity to start kind of paying attention to that and how that, like the softer edges where form turns very softly, very, and babies and children are mostly going to be that. So, so you can do that. So I probably would do that in a lot of these areas along here. I can keep putzing with it. Did you, or do we have more questions or?
Yeah, we have a couple.
Yeah, let's go ahead and.
Awesome. Okay, here I'm just filtering through the ones I already asked. How do you get the grayscale effect for the reference photo? I kind of answered how I do it in the chat earlier by just like a quick editing software or even just the photo app that your phone comes with. You can edit to black and white, but how do you do it?
Yeah, I just use that software that my phone comes with. And yeah, you kind of just have to play with it and be be aware of what it's doing, because certain just play with all those settings and go up and go down. So I just take it, it's called saturation, so I just move the saturation to 0 so there's no color, and then start playing with all the other lighting things and see what's giving me, for this image, what's going to give me the best image. So right here at the top of the eye, we can see it's very soft. It's actually sharp. This little white area is very sharp, but then it's very soft curve going up into the eyebrow. So that's a nice example of like some soft and hard edges going on there. Yeah, just play with your black and white, in a black and white photo, just play with the settings and try to find one that makes the most sense. Like you're always choosing, in this I have to choose, well, do I want this little spot or is it less important? What exactly? So you're always making an artistic choice what you need to see and how much. So the same thing when you're doing the editing, you're just kind of making a choice, like, what do I want this to look like? If this one takes out that shape but puts in this other shape, or emphasizes something and doesn't emphasize something else, just play with it till it gives you what you want.
Yeah, for sure. And then today, are you using a hot press paper or a cold press? Sorry if you already said that.
Oh, this is a cold press. I don't think I did say that. Yeah, I think generally for a big wash like this, like some very drippy technique, I would always use a cold press. Hot press is great for more like illustration type of work where you're doing more refined detail with the paint itself. But anytime you want it to really like bleed together and get weird watercolory effects, I would suggest cold press.
And then the brushes you're using today, I think those are the etcher brushes, right?
Yeah, these are the etcher brushes, and I'm happy with them. They give a very nice, they actually keep a really nice point. So That's nice. This is maybe, I guess that would be my suggestion for etcher. Like we could use like a little bit of a wider one for washes, but I'm working super small. So this is just 5x7,
Mhm.
like a photograph. So, you know, this is maybe enough for a wash for something small, but of course you'd want like a big old, you know, soppy brush if you were going to do something, you know, bigger. For your wash, or maybe even a natural hair. But I think for the detail work, the etcher brushes are really nice.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I'm not sure. We have a gouache brush set as well, and I'm not sure if the flat one, and it's a size 12, so I'm not sure if it's bigger than that one at the top of my
No.
head. Um, but yeah, I agree. If we come out with another brush set, we definitely need to have a big wash brush in there or some kind of Chinese mop brush or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, any more questions? I'm just checking my notes here to see if I had any more saved, but I think I might have gotten to them all. If I by any chance missed one, I'm sorry. And if you wouldn't mind typing it in again, that would be great. Yes, Allison, our brushes are vegan as well. All our art supplies are actually vegan. They're all ethically sourced, so you don't have to feel bad about purchasing our products.
Yes. Always good to have guilt-free art.
Yeah.
Although I do like my squirrel hairbrush, to be honest.
Well,
Oh,
I
we have a lot of
personally
squirrels
haven't
around here, so.
I personally haven't tried natural hair, but I've tried like a blend of both synthetic and natural, and it was really interesting to see the difference between just regular synthetic.
They hold a lot more water. I think that's the main difference.
Yeah,
But they don't hold the point. They are not as stiff, so they don't hold the point necessarily.
yeah, that's
So
what I
well,
appreciate. They last longer, the synthetic ones.
yeah, that could be true. I don't do enough watercolors to be burning through my hair, but
I just have a bad habit of abusing my brushes.
yeah, and oil I definitely do. And oil, they take quite a beating.
Alrighty, so I think we're coming up to a close here. We've gone almost 10 minutes over the regular time, so I'm going to start to wrap it up if you don't mind, Claudia.
Yeah. Here, I'll become a human being again.
No worries. I'll put it to gallery
Thanks,
view.
you guys. I so appreciate everybody showing up and taking a look at this. And yeah, I can't wait to read through all the comments and see if you guys give this a try. Go ahead and post it on the at your Facebook page so we can see what you're doing. That would be awesome. And come to the mini workshop, and then I'll be able to see what you create in that, and we'll have a little more time. So be very fun.
Yeah. If anybody missed the link earlier that I posted for the Facebook page, I'll post it again. It's just a page of like-minded artists and community members who all want to hang out, post their work. Sometimes people just post just to post their work. Sometimes people are looking for critiques. It's just an awesome group of super nice people, and it's exclusive to people who join our workshops and live demos. So if you want to join it, there's the link there. And some of our artists are in it as well. So if you're ever looking for some tips or want some exclusive little snippets, sometimes you'll catch them. Also, here's the link again for her mini workshop. If you haven't signed up already and you want to know more, make sure you do so. Any information you need to know is in that link I just posted. It's on August 21st. And like I said earlier, it is recorded. So if you by any chance can't make the date and time and you really want to learn more about her techniques, then sign up anyways and we'll send you a recording.
And if you're curious about more of my work in general, check out my website. It's just claudiaselene.com. CLAUDIASELENE.com. So that's all the random weird stuff I've mentioned here about, like, sometimes I draw and sometimes I do oil paint, and yeah.
She also has an Instagram, which is, I have it right here.
It's at
I'll grab
Claudia
it.
Art.
I'll grab you guys a link just in case that's a little bit easier. And then on her bio, there's a link to her other Instagram profile, and she's got art on both. If you guys want to check out more of her work. Also, make sure to like and subscribe this video. It will lead you to seeing more of this type of content on your page. If you like seeing these demos, definitely make sure you do that. And then just one last thing before we go, I should say, is the survey. So like I mentioned earlier, and if you've been in these live demos before, you know that it's a super quick survey, multiple choice, with a little comment section at the bottom. Really helps us improve content for the future. And like I said, if you just think we did an amazing job, you can totally just put nothing but good things in there. I will be totally okay with that. Thank you everybody for joining. It's been a wonderful time. Just reading comments here, Claudia, everybody is saying you did an amazing job today. You're such a great teacher, and a bunch of people have already signed up.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
All right, everybody, I'll let you get back to whatever you're doing before today's live demo. Thank you for joining. It's been a great time, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. Make sure to check out our other demos coming up. We do these pretty much daily.
Awesome.
Bye.
Guys.